Christianity believes that the origin of man is from God. Of course, this is just a religious viewpoint. According to the account in the book of Genesis, everything in the world is the result of God's word. For Christians, God is a creator out of nothing, while for ancient Greek philosophers, even God is a craftsman subject to laws. For example, in Plato's Timaeus, he describes how God imparted various ideas to primeval matter, upon which he constructed our sensory world. Therefore, according to Plato's theory, the material of things already exists, and God only creates the form of things. However, in Christianity, God's act of creation requires neither material nor form. God also does not need to use any tools. He doesn't even need time and space. God created the whole world just by speaking. It's easy to say this, but it's hard to make others believe. The Bible can indeed serve as the basis of faith, but Augustine believes God needs a kind viewpoint that comes from knowledge itself to defend. This is the question Augustine raises in his discussion on free will. In the middle of the discussion, he divides the things found in the world into three categories. The first category are objects that exist but do not have life, such as wood, stone, and so on. The second category are living beings with senses but without wisdom, like most animals. The third category consists of living beings with life and wisdom, like us who possess rational abilities. Although we have the same five senses as animals, Augustine believes that what makes us superior to animals is that in our minds we have two most valuable things, precious things. One is knowledge of mathematics. The other is the judgment of values. We all know that mathematics has intuitive truth. In other words, mathematical knowledge is self-evident. For example, 11 equals 2, it will always equal 2. Augustine believed the truth of ethics is like the truth of mathematics. Both are the common property of humanity. For example, everyone wants to achieve happiness because wisdom is knowledge related to goodness. Wisdom is a prerequisite for obtaining happiness. Although everyone's understanding of the ultimate good is not uniform, they can still reach many agreements. For example, everyone desires a fair social environment. Everyone is equal in the face of opportunities. Therefore, Augustine said, the rules of virtue and instructive knowledge are both true and eternally unchanging. They apply to every soul and reason. He believed that the similarity between mathematics and wisdom lies in they are both eternal and unchanging truths. This truth is contained within a single unchanging truth, and this truth is not anyone's private property, but belongs to the common property of all. This truth is certainly more advanced than our minds, because it is independent of our value judgments, and beyond cognitive levels. Just like the example I mentioned earlier, 11 equals 2. Even though many people may argue, even if his cognition is impaired, it does not affect the truth itself in the slightest. Therefore, Augustine believed, if there is anything superior to truth, then that truth must be God. Therefore, people should transform their belief in God into an existing knowledge, even if this knowledge is very unreliable. Perhaps you will continue to ask, what exactly is the nature of God? We can find his explanation in Augustine's City of God. His statement can be found. He said a container holds liquid. An object has color. The sky also has light and heat. Just as a mind also possesses wisdom. But the container and the liquid are not the same thing. The object and the color are also not the same thing. The light and heat of the sky are not the same thing. Just like our soul and wisdom are not the same thing. These things can lose everything they have, and they will constantly undergo changes. Just like a container can pour out liquid, objects can lose their color. The sky can also become dark and cold. Our soul can also lose wisdom, thus becoming dull. When a quality can no longer lose anything, when a quality itself is no different from what it possesses, at this time, this quality is called pure. And God's nature is indeed pure. Within this purity, the most important attribute is goodness. Just as God gives existence to creatures, similarly, he also gives them goodness. Everything created by God is fundamentally good. Therefore, evil is not a real entity. It is rather the absence of goodness. Any evil deed is a lack of goodness. Thus, the nature that God gives to each creature, it's not as good as another creation. There is no regret. For example, there are people smarter and stronger than you. There are many differences between all things. It is this diversity of talents that brings beauty to the world. So God does not owe any creation. Augustine always believed, a person's evil is without reason. Free will is a gift from God, but freedom itself carries the risk of misusing freedom. The above. This is Augustine's defense of God's creation. Seeing this, he may not be able to convince us to believe in the stories of the Bible, but it compels us to consider deeper thoughts on free will. Just imagine. Our laws today are all based on the premise that humans have free will. What is true freedom then? I believe at least a price must be paid for freedom. To bear the risks of freedom. www. Only then is it possible to attain true freedom. Just as sin is born, the price of freedom is facing unknown risks and various insecurities. If a slave has the courage to give up the mere gifts that keep him fed and clothed, to abandon those humble and pitiful feelings of security, even if he won't have lunch tomorrow, even if he moves forward with chains and shackles, he is no longer a slave, but a free person. If this slave spends all day indulging in food and comfort, humbly begging the master for more food, even if receiving the master's gifts, shedding the chains and shackles, putting on so-called respectable clothes, he is still not a free person, but a self-deceiving slave. When external risks and insecurities arise, their hearts will not produce the courage to face them. Instead, I constantly beg for my shackles back. Give me back my chains. Give me back that part of me, without facing insecurity, to have a fulfilling life. So what is freedom? I think freedom is Adam eating the apple in the Bible. Freedom is Icarus flying towards the sun in Greek mythology. It's not the apple that made Adam free, but the courage to eat it. It's the courage to choose to eat the apple. Similarly, it's not the wings that made Icarus fly, but the determination to do so without hesitation. Next episode, let's talk about the core issues of Christian anthropology, redemption and original sin. Stay tuned as I simplify philosophy for you. Friends, see you in the next episode.